Hey guys, welcome back to the Workbench. You might notice there have been some changes. This is probably the cleanest you'll ever see the Workbench. Today we're going to talk about a topic that we started with, which is Lasko and Sanyo products. I hope we established in my rant that any fan that comes through the Lasko plant in Pennsylvania is indeed a Lasko. But we haven't talked much about the history of Lasko and Sanyo and the changes over the years. So let's get into it. Before we do, I just want to clarify this. Any Sanyo fan that is sold in the US as a wholly Sanyo product will say Sanyo on it. Usually on the lower canopy, or if it has the switch housing, on the switch housing. Okay, so let's start with the history of Sanyo. Sanyo has, that I could find, the very first vintage ceiling fan patent in the US. They have a patent in 1975 that shows a three-bladed industrial with the same shape of motor that we're commonly recognized as a Dayton Lasko motor, but smooth on the bottom, no switch housing, and three blades. I know we've seen several pictures of the four-bladed version. I think we've seen the three-bladed version. Also referenced in that patent is the three-blade version with the switch housing and the pull cord that we commonly recognize as a Sanyo product. And then also referenced in that patent is something I've never seen before, which is a three-blade version with the smooth motor and the pull cord out of the center with no switch housing. Just the bottom of the motor and then the cord out the center. I don't know if that was ever put into production. Sometimes things are referenced in patents and then never put into production. So that's 75. The first time Sanyo branded ceiling fans show up in the US is 1979. And in 1979 they offer the three-blade version that we come to know as a Dayton Lasko, with the pull cord out the center and the speed counter, not light kit adaptable. And then they offer their more residential version, which has the pull cord out of the side, a rounded cover on the bottom. They are light kit adaptable. The 36-inch version has three blades, metal blades. The 48-inch version has four metal blades. Both of these are offered with fake wood grain or white. That's 79. In 1980, they introduced some more decorative options. Some integrated light kits, some gold pinstriping, and they even have an ornate version with like molded plastic ornate styles on the motor housing. And then they had stencil blades, but metal stencil blades, which I don't know that any other company offered. So it's gold stencil on a metal blade. But one of the important takeaways is Sanyo did not have brass plating and they did not have wood blades. So anything that you see in the U.S. that says Sanyo prior to 1985, and we'll get into that, is going to be all metal and plastic. There's going to be no brass and there's going to be no wood. So the last year for these fans is 1983. And they continue to offer all those styles through 83, and then in 83 they all disappear. In 1985, Sanyo labeled fans reappear, but they are rebranded Panasonics. They have like the Knight and the King Arthur and stuff like that, but with a Sanyo label on it. And then also in 1985, those really weird Canadian Sanyos turn up that are brass with cane blades, and they've got kind of a vaguely 1895 looking style to them. And those appear to be exclusive to Canada, and they're only 1985, and they also appear to be a rebranded Panasonic. So that helps explain, because I've had some people in the fan industry tell me that Sanyo was just rebranded Panasonics, and I was like, I don't think that's the case, but it was the case in 1985. So, and there is nothing in the US or Canada with a Sanyo label after 1985. So that's Sanyo. Let's talk about Lasko. So Lasko first sold ceiling fans under the Galaxy label. And the Galaxy labeled fans show up in 1979. And a Galaxy by Lasko ceiling fan in 1979 is what we know as a Dayton Lasko, with the four blades, the speed counter, all of that. Now, one thing that's important to note is that branded as Sanyo products, they're all three-blade. Branded as Lasko products, they're all four-blade. So what it appears is that Lasko spec'd the four-blade and the smaller size. Again, Sanyo didn't even offer the smaller size in that fan. They were 56 only. Lasko had the 40-inch and the 56. So Lasko spec'd the version that they sold, which is the 4-blade and then both sizes. And again, those were available in brown with fake wood grain and white. And those first showed up under the Galaxy model name in 1979. However, they showed up through Grainger in 1978 as Dayton, Grainger's house brand. I have a theory that Grainger was buying those from Lasko, who was buying them spec'd to their, design from Sanyo as early as 76, because I believe I've seen them in a Grainger catalog as early as 76. But I don't have any evidence that that's just a theory. So, but we know that they're sold as Galaxy and as Dayton in the US by 78 for Grainger, 79 for Galaxy. So that's 79, 1980. That's all that was offered in 1980. And then in 1981, Lasko introduces the plastic motor housing. Theirs is a little different than the Sanyo design. The Sanyo design is smooth. The Lasko design has kind of a checkerboard pattern. And they introduced wood blades, which were made by, I don't know if they were made at the Lasko plant or another plant and brought in, but they were not imported. They were domestic. And that was 48-inch only. I believe that they were offered in stencil and cane, and that was 1981. In 1982 is when we have a lot more options. They introduce the brass cover on the bottom of those motor housings, and again, if you pull it off, it's just a checkerboard motor housing, and then there's like a brass cover with oval vents for the same 48-inch model. They also introduced the 52-inch model, which there's the ornate version, which I've done several videos of. There were 2 at 12 wings, one of my favorite fans. And then there's the version without the ornate cover, which kind of has builder vents underneath. That was introduced in 1982. That version is 52-inch only. Now, by 1982, there are no Dayton Laskos sold as Galaxy or Lasko. The Dayton Lasko by 1982 is only through Dayton as Grainger. And I'm not sure what year Grainger discontinued it, but I believe I've seen it into the late 80s. The other thing that's interesting about 1982 is that you see a lot of retailers that sell both Sanyo and Lasko products, so it seems they use the same distribution networks. In 1983, all Lasko branded fans outside of Grainger are on clearance or closeout, so it looks like they were phasing out their ceiling fan line, and it's the last year we ever see the Galaxy name for a ceiling fan. So that's 83. But 84 is when we first see Lasko ceiling fans in Sears, and we're going to talk about Sears separately. In 1985, Lasko branded fans appear again outside of Sears, but again as clearance and closeout items at some of the older models. In 1986, we see the American Classic, which I refer to as the Walmart Lasko, but I mean, they were sold other places. It's essentially a turn of the century with different vents. And it's, sold at Walmart and other places as the American Classic. That was 1986. In 1987, Lasko patented the contemporary spinner. I find this really interesting because the contemporary spinner, the little 36-inch multicolored spinner they sold at Walmart and other places, it looks a lot like a Dayton Lasko. It very much seems like a Dayton Lasko for a residential sale. But it was designed and patented by Lasko, not by Sanyo. So it seems like they were using the design that they were, they'd spec to Sanyo and were buying from Sanyo, and they had, kind of redesigned it for residential sales and then patented it under their own name. So that patent was filed in 87. We don't see that for sale until a couple years later. Sometimes companies will patent something after it's for sale, sometimes, but in this case, we don't see it for sale until a year or two later. 1988 is the last year that they sold fans that were spec'd exclusively for Sears. And in 1989, there are no Lasko fans sold at Sears. Again, we're going to talk about Sears a little later. In 1990, the contemporary spinner that we just discussed shows up in the Sears catalog, but it's also sold at Walmart at the same time. And I believe it's the first time that a Lasko fan is the same sold at Sears as it is sold somewhere else. And then, as I think we know, Lasko sold fans through Walmart and other retailers well into the 90s, sometimes as their own name, sometimes as American Classic, and sometimes as House Beautiful. So that's Lasko and Galaxy. Now we're going to talk about Sears. And again, I have all the Sears catalogs and slideshows. You can go look at those. They're uploaded onto Dan Spiffy Newman Ceiling Fans. You can find them other places throughout the web. So this Sears section is stuff you can learn just by looking at the Sears catalog. But we're gonna discuss it here, just in case you don't feel like going on a hunt. So 84, as we discussed, is the first year of Lasko products, Lasko ceiling fan products in the Sears catalog. And the first fan they introduce is the fan that I think of as the most Searsy Lasko or Lasko-y Sears, the Ornate turn of the century. It's initially a variable speed fan. Later on, it's offered with a remote. The 4 oak blades, the ornate bottom plate. Later on, it was offered with a close mount option. I have some. I've done videos of them. I have some childhood memories of them. You guys know which one I'm talking about. It was in just about every Sears catalog in the mid-'80s. And that was the first fan they introduced. Second fan they introduced was the plain 4-speed turn of the century, but in polished brass only. Emerson was still making the other finishes for them. Looks like they gave polished brass as the introductory finish for Lasko. And then the last fan that was introduced in 84 was a weird spinner that used the same motor housing as the 52-inch top mounts from 82 with the builder vents, but had a single speed and 3 36-inch blades. Those are incredibly rare. You don't see them very often, and I suspect that's because they're hideous. But they do show up in pictures. That was introduced in 84. In 85, they introduced the weird ornate version, which is kind of like a tapered ornate motor housing. And I think that was also variable speed. And then they also introduced the plain 4-speed turn of the century. And then all the models they introduced in 84 were still there. In 86, the weird ornate thing and the weird small spinner are gone. The 5-blade turn of the century, which is one of my absolute favorite Laskos, probably second to the Dayton Lasko, which is my favorite. That was introduced in 86, and that's now their variable speed fan, and the ornate turn of the century, which was variable speed, is now remote controlled. In 87, there are no changes. In 88, the plain turn of the century is completely gone. No one's making that. Not Lasko, not Emerson. But the ornate remote turn of the century is now available in polished brass and antique brass. And by the way, they later sold that fan through Walmart under the Lasko name with just a different switch housing in both polished and antique, which I thought was cool. I've never actually seen the Sears version in polished brass. I've seen the Walmart version in polished brass. Okay, that's 88. In 89, there are no Lasko fans in the Sears catalog. And then in 1990, the contemporary spinner shows up. And again, I think that's the only fan that is sold exactly the same in the Sears catalog as it is through Walmart and other retailers. And then after 1990, there's no more Lasko fans in the Sears catalog. So there you have it. That is the history of Sanyo, Lasko, Galaxy, and Sears Lasko turn of the century ceiling fans. I didn't think I was going to have enough information to do a whole update video for this, and I was surprised when I started digging and I had some help doing some research just how much we learned. Shout out to this video's sponsor, which is the Neon Fan Company. We'll talk more about them in future videos, but I hope that that you've learned a lot from this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I look forward to your suggestions for future Workbench videos. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. And I think Cole says hit the notification bell. And I don't know what that means, but if Cole says to do it, do it. So thanks for watching.